Hi guys, welcome back to Behind the Sawdust, our weekly-ish vlog that shows what goes on when the cameras are off here at the two Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal shops. Today I want to talk about a disease that afflicts many woodworkers. I call it Rearrangeritis. It presents as an obsessive need to move things around in the workshop in an endless search for the perfect layout. Some of you may suffer from this problem. Maybe you're like me and you tear the shop apart at least twice a year. It begins innocently enough. You'll just move one thing. Maybe that workbench would be better over just a foot or two. But it's not that simple because something already sits in that place. So you have to move it too. Then you move another thing and another, and before you know it, you're having a full-scale attack of Rearrangeritis. Only those who suffer from this affliction really understand how it works. Our friends and family think we're crazy. So this past week, when I had a relatively mild outbreak, I decided to film it so that others can see exactly why a person with Rearrangeritis can't move just one thing. Let's have a look. All I was going to do was move a workbench. Behind my bench, beneath the tool cabinet on the wall, is an open space, and I wanted to fill that space with some storage bins. The storage bins in question currently reside on the other side of the shop. I like these bins because the small drawers are great for organizing all my junk, but they look terrible. I could make some wooden cabinets and drawers, which was my original intention. These were supposed to be just temporary, but you know how that is. So I decided that the best way to not have these things uglying up my shop anymore was to move them behind the workbench into that hidden space. One nice feature about these types of drawers, which you can buy at Walmart or home centers, I think they're made by Sterilite, is that you can take them apart and reconfigure them however you like. I had them stacked up into tall drawer banks, and now I'm breaking them down into short drawer banks, making a nice row. Say what you want about them, particularly that they're ugly, but that is a heck of a lot of storage for the price. It does bother me that some of them are black and some are white, but since these will mostly be hidden, I think I can live with it, at least until the day finally arrives when I have time to replace them with proper wooden cabinets. I'll pencil that in for some time when I'm in my 70s. A bonus is that I now have another long, flat surface to pile more crap on. Remember this sharpening cabinet I made years ago? I keep all my water stones and accessories in there. And this little bench grinder still has those wooden tool rests I made way back when. Ah, memories. Thankfully, my workbench has wheels, so I can get at the drawers when I have to. But you'd be surprised how rarely I actually need anything in those things. Maybe I should throw some of that stuff away. No time for that now, because I've created a void by moving those storage bins, and I have to fill it with something. I never did like the lathe on this side of the shop. I felt like it was crowded too close to the CNC on the left, which made it hard to get good camera angles while I film. If you've got your own case of Rearrangeritis, be glad you don't have to worry about camera equipment too. It makes everything a lot worse. Anywho, I think the lathe would be better over where those bins used to be. I like the openness behind it. Someone can stand on those steps and film from the back side if I want them to. But now I've opened up a big space where the lathe used to be. We're way past the point of no return now. Time to pick up the floor mats because stuff's about to get moved all over the place. This giant machine is my drum sander. I've never used it because I have a homemade drum sander at the other shop, but I keep it around, mostly so I can move it around whenever Rearrangeritis takes hold of me. It's big and awkward, and it never seems to fit right anywhere I put it. For now, I'm sticking it in the only open space I have, where the lathe was. But I already hate it there. The L-feed runs right into the side of the CNC. This is never going to work. I'm going to have to move some more things around. One side benefit of all of this moving things around is I get to sweep up dust that's accumulated beneath things. Since most machines are on wheels, I suppose I could move them and sweep more often, but come on, who does that? Certainly no one around this shop. But sweeping does give a man time to reflect, and I have an idea about what to do with that drum sander. Of course, it does involve moving some other things around, starting with my horizontal bandsaw. This is another tool that hardly ever gets used. I cut an occasional piece of threaded rod or T-track for a jig on it. The rest of the time it just spends collecting cobwebs. But it moves a lot easier than this cabinet full of sharpening jigs for my Tormek. Even empty, this thing weighs a ton. Seriously, it's ridiculously overbuilt. I know that means it'll last forever, but It sucks when you gotta move it. The rubber feet do not slide on my shop floor. It always becomes this wrestling match, and I end up looking stupid like I am right here. But by moving it, I have freed up some space next to the bench, and I'm thinking that the drill press may work out well there. Look at this. The drill press weighs half as much as that stinking cabinet. I've moved this thing a few times over the years, which is why I never bolt it to the floor. Usually you want to bolt down your drill press because they're top heavy, and this one is pretty wobbly. I already hate it here. It's too close to the bench, and I don't think it goes with the hand tool wall. See, this is the sort of thing people with rearrangeritis obsess over. So it's back over against this wall. This is technically a different spot. It's at least 5 feet from where it was a few minutes ago. But if the drill press is returning to this wall, the torment cabinet can't go here. I wonder how many times I can wrestle this thing around before I snap my spine. Ooh, this looks like a good spot for it. I believe it's a good 1.5 inches from where I originally had it. Now I have this big open spot along the wall between the drill press and the end of the jointer. Something's got to go there. What to do, what to do. The lathe. I never really liked it next to the steps like that anyway. I mean, who's going to want to stand on the steps and film from the back side when all the cutting happens on the front side anyway? It's a good thing this cabinet's still on wheels. I actually plan to take the wheels off so the lathe isn't so high off the floor and to stabilize it better. As it is, it wobbles on those swivel casters. And now that the lathe is moved again, I can do something different with that drum sander. I don't know who had the dumb idea of putting it over here next to the CNC machine like this. Putting it next to the steps would work out perfectly because the outfeed is higher than the steps, so I can use it unobstructed if I ever get around to using it. To tell you the truth, I think I had it here once before. You know why it moved? Rearrangeritis. Who put this drill press over here? It's too crowded. The end of the jointer is too close to the lathe cabinet too. This is never going to work. But it just so happens that another place has recently opened up on the other side of the shop where the lathe was, and then the drum sander, and now the drill press. Of course, some of that stuff on the wall have to be moved, but that's just part of the disease. The important thing is I can move the lathe down a few more inches. But that does open up a spot between the lathe and the jointer, and that'll have to be filled. And you know what that means. I'm wrestling with this stinking torment cabinet again. It is narrow enough to stay out of the way of the jointer's infeed table, so it's a good spot for it. This is the 5th time I've moved it today, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the last. Things are starting to come together, at least on the floor. The walls, those are a different story. For one thing, I have clamps hanging on these steel racks in various places around the shop. I love these racks. I'll link to them in the notes below the video so you can check them out. This one is for those one-handed style clamps. I think it would be better if I attached it to the loft above my air cleaner. Now, you may think this is a random change, but this isn't random. By moving this rack over here, I can then move my bar clamp rack over to where this rack was. Yes, the bar clamp rack is a different style than the one-handed clamp rack. They even have a different style for the pipe clamps, which right now are hanging on the wall above where the drum sander is. And next to the bandsaw, I have another pipe clamp rack because it works really well for my heavy-duty bar clamps. Since I moved the drill press, I also have to move the steel tray that hangs on the wall behind it that holds some of the larger bits and accessories. These trays are another cool thing that I'll link to in the notes below. I use them for all sorts of stuff. And whenever I have an outbreak of rearrangeritis, they get moved too. They've been all over this shop. In fact, everything on the walls gets moved. Part of my obsessiveness is that I must have every open place on every wall covered with something. This is a table saw sled, which works really well if you're not into building your own. Don't get me wrong, it's not just about covering open spaces. I like to have things organized too. I hate things piled up on the floor. So if I can hang it on a wall, I'm going to do it. And before I get any comments about the heater being too close to the things on the wall, it's not. All of the heat rises above the heater. I can hold my hand on the side of the heater at full flame and never get hot. Of course, this is my shop. If I burn it down, it's my fault. So use your own judgment in your own shop. Here's a problem I bet you don't have in your shop: finding a place to put your teleprompter when you're not using it. Now I can tuck it next to my drill press, and it won't get destroyed the next time I swing a sheet of plywood up onto the table saw. And I think the two look good next to each other. Like I said, a big factor in my shop is how things will look on camera. Not that the teleprompter is on camera very often, but you get my point. The new layout will require some minor modifications to the dust collection, but I shouldn't have to change any of the main ducts. I planned for these moves when I installed them. This isn't my first outbreak. Back to the clamp racks. I moved them around so I could hang my lathe tools on the wall above the lathe where the bar clamps used to be. I usually use these magnetic strips to hold my lathe tools, but my carbide tools have stainless steel shafts that won't stick to magnets. So I use these little handle clamps. You could buy these at Walmart and places like that to hold broom handles, that sort of thing. They work well for lathe tools too. Someday I'll build a proper tool rack, but these are a great option if you want something quick and cheap. Ooh, can't leave that spot above the lathe tools open. Since I use my air shield with the lathe a lot, it's the perfect place to hang it. This is actually kind of the fun part of a Rearrangeritis outbreak. I like finding places to hang things on the wall, and it helps me to be more organized. This holds my bench cookies and accessories, which had been a big mess in a drawer before. I like that I can see if something is missing because everything has a place, and that way things don't get lost nearly as often. And every video crew needs a clacker. I took this one with me to Woodworking in America in 2015, and in the Video Woodworkers booth I had some of my fellow video woodworkers sign it for me. Ever since I carved this giant eagle, I've been looking for a place to put it. We'll see how long it takes for it to fall off the loft and kill someone using the drill press below it. While I'm moving things around on the walls, I'm thinking about a bigger screen over the CNC. This one is an old television that doesn't work well as a PC monitor. Besides, I think I can fit a bigger one in that same space, and bigger's always better. How big? Well, it turns out that 42 inches is as big as I can fit. It's a good thing I was already all hulked up from moving around that Torment cabinet, because these televisions are heavier than they look. But I think it's a vast improvement. I use the monitor to work with SketchUp models when I'm at my table saw and for the CNC. Plus, it's a great place for watching YouTube videos and streaming other stuff. One last open space to be covered. This is something I've needed for a while. It's a shelf for my small parts bins. I used to keep them on the other side of the shop, but now they're here near my workbench like they should be. And finally, I hung a few small jigs and all my hammers from the loft on the other side of the workshop, along with more clamps. You can never have too many clamps. I'm pretty sure there's at least 11 billion around here. Well, this outbreak of Rearrangeritis is finally clearing up. You may think, looking around the shop, which isn't all that big to begin with, that there aren't that many different ways to arrange it. That's because you don't have Rearrangeritis. There is always another way to arrange things. And this is just one of 2 shops we have here at Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. In fact, I'm already getting the itch to change some things over at the other shop. Maybe we'll make a video about it down the road. Please take a minute to check out the links and notes below the video, especially our sponsors' websites. Unfortunately, good woodworking content isn't really free. They pay the bills so you don't have to. So give them a visit so they'll know you appreciate it. Then you can sit back, have yourself a cold one. I know I've earned it, my friend.